Today, we're going to be sorting my stuff because I've been noticing that when I've been building different decks for regionals recently that my stuff is terribly unsorted. I'll show you in a second how I have it arranged currently. I had you guys submit questions to have something to talk about during the stream, right? Just a chill time, you know? By the way, I'm using this mat today. It's beautiful and I can't use it at tournaments anymore, so I'll put it here. So this is sorted. Everything else that I found in my room yesterday, I threw into this box. So this is all over the place. The 80s called and they want their sorting system back. Dude, how are you gonna sort cards other than in boxes? What's 80s about that? Don't bully my collection. Use binders? Dude, binders? You want me to put all these cards into binders? Are you insane? Binders are the worst possible solution for having a big collection. It takes you forever to find something. If you take it out of the binder, there's a hole in it. It's dumb. I'll just grab the first pile and we start with that. Rocking the Master Duel mouse. Yeah, I got the Yu-Gi-Oh drip for my desk. I got the mouse pad and the mouse. What brand are you using for the sleeves? It's just the ones that I've been using all my life. It's not like I've compared 10 different brands, but it's just this one's the ones I've always been using and I like them. KMC Hyper Matte Mini. I'll let you know, there's a fun little mini game that we play today, which is spot the cards that Josh has ordered because of random paleo copium. The first one is right here because there's like 10,000 different trap cards that people have suggested. You could play gift card, hope for escape, paleozoics, and I was like, you know what? Just in case. First question from Mewtwo0094 was, what made you begin with Yu-Gi-Oh and why did you start playing it competitively? Why I started playing competitively, I couldn't really tell you. I can only really guess that I was always kind of a competitive person and I really liked that about the game. I can definitely tell you why I started going like hardcore competitive and why I started traveling to like every single event. It's a very random reason. I qualified for Worlds basically on accident in 2012. At that time, I would only very rarely go to big tournaments, but I did go to the European Championship in 2012. I wasn't bad or anything. I wasn't like insane either. I just went with a couple of friends. I qualified for Worlds and I even got third place at Worlds, which was also completely unreasonable for how good I was at the time compared to some of the other players at Worlds. I don't know, something like that just sucks you in. You really want to go back and try again. This was kind of the thing that made me go really competitive. Avex asks, can you name a thing about Yu-Gi-Oh that is definitely better than every other TCG you know about and a thing that Yu-Gi-Oh does the worst out of all of them? I think the best thing about Yu-Gi-Oh, which is for a lot of people also the worst thing, it's complexity. Something about it is just so rewarding to be good at a game that is so complex. Its beginner friendliness, I would say, is like one of the worst things about it. Pricing is another topic. I personally have never had an issue with the pricing. For some reason, my mentality about that is just different. I've always seen Yu-Gi-Oh as a hobby. In my world, hobbies don't need to pay you back for what you've invested. I think it's a nice thing if they do and something you should appreciate if your hobby does that. But choosing like a different card game, like if you genuinely think Yu-Gi-Oh is the best game or the most fun for you, I don't think you should be playing a different game because it has better prizes or something. If Yu-Gi-Oh TCG allows you to have one card in your starting hand, which one would you pick? Psyframe Driver. So we have that out of the way and I can draw real cards because I draw it anyways. So if I make it my guaranteed opener, then I won't be mad about it. What single card do you think would have had the greatest impact on Yu-Gi-Oh history if it were erased from existence? I don't know what the erasing part is because like you clearly just mean the most impactful Yu-Gi-Oh card, right? What is the most impactful Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time? Like across all formats? It's probably Maxi. I was thinking Mystic Mine because that kind of like had a huge impact, but that's just a couple years in the TCG. Called By deserves to be named. Called By is a really good card. I don't think Called By deserves to be mentioned in that discussion. I think Ash Blossom was a good bring up. Compared to Maxi, Ash Blossom is relatively recent. I think Effect Veiler deserves to be mentioned, but I think it's just Maxi. Elena asks, the OCG and TCG become one format. Everyone gets the new card at the same time, but also you have to play with the OCG ban list. What do you think about this? No. I think I talked about this exact thing in a recent video. I said I'm all for one format between everyone, but the TCG gets to make the ban list. I'm not playing in no OCG ban list format. What about adopting OCG rules? I think the rules should be the same for everyone regardless. I think that one is weird that they have slightly different rules in the OCG. I think we should probably adapt them and have the same rules for everyone. that would be preferred. I picked up these in Japan when we were at Worlds, just as my spirit animal to practice for Master Duel Worlds, and it did pay off, so I'm smart. And for this one, I also have a really cool story. There was this one Konami guy, I think he was a volunteer, I'm not sure. We were sitting all three next to each other and we were playing our games, and there was like Konami officials or Konami volunteers or whatever behind us, and they were watching and telling us when to start the games and when to select our decks and all that kind of stuff. That guy was responsible for us for the entire day, basically, right? He was watching our games, telling us when to start and all that, and he was really nice. And after we won, he gave us each one of the cards in our decks that we played and that he was seeing us use a lot throughout the tournament, right? He gave me Talents. I forgot what he gave Quantal. It was not Reinhardt. I think he gave Emre an evenly matched. Oh, it was a Kikkalos, right? So that was pretty cute. That guy was nice. If you are a bounty duelist at a YCS, they give you these tokens, and then when you lose to someone, you have to give them the token. They can go to the prize wall and get some boosters for it. This was YCS Dortmund, I think. I played against Herman second last round or something. I beat him. He gave me the token. I forgot to turn it in, and then I decided, well, I'll just keep it. It's kind of a cool memory. I kept it. So I got this one for defeating Herman, the bounty duelist at YCS Dortmund. I still have it. And this one is a quarter century, I think it's Zark. On the Friday at the welcome dinner for Worlds, they did a little mini game. They opened some packs and they gave everyone one card face down. Every card was there twice, and they would have the rest of the cards and they would shuffle them up and draw a card, and whoever had the same card from all the players, they would get a little prize or something. And out of all the random cards that they opened, I got a quarter century Zark, which all the Japanese players were like, oh, that's really nice. So I kept that one. Actually, let me put these like special memory cards somewhere else. This is a Reinhardt I want to get signed by Quantal. I still haven't yet. Someone asked, how did you and Emre meet? I'm gonna be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you because I've known Emre for a very long time. Basically, Emre is a decent bit younger than I am, and it was just like at a time where I was already playing very actively in my area. Emre showed up as like still a very, very young kid basically and started playing. I don't know what the first interaction even was, because Emre I think is like 5 years younger than me. I'm not sure, maybe even more. Next question. Do you only play Yu-Gi-Oh for a living, or do you have any other sources that you get income? Okay, so I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh for a living. I create content about Yu-Gi-Oh for a living at the moment. I do not have another job next to streaming. No. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a living is not possible with the price pool that we're being offered. That is not a thing that anyone does. I don't think it should be either. That's the thing. I am not complaining about the fact that you cannot make a living off of playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Yes, a better prize pool would be nice, but for me personally, like I said earlier already, it's not something that's required for me to choose a hobby. A hobby for me is always something that I just enjoy and want to spend my time with. The way you spend your free time, I don't think should also be dictated by money. Ideally, right? Do you still play Legends of Runeterra? No, unfortunately not. As far as I know, the competitive side of the game has basically died. After Yu-Gi-Oh, what card game is the best in your opinion? Well, that would have been Legends of Runeterra. I like Lorcana at the moment. I have not tried Flesh and Blood. I have played Digimon and One Piece before. I think they're both cool, but currently my second favorite is Lorcana. Do you think there's a lot of cheating at big tournaments, either illegal plays, time rule abuse, or stacking, or do you think inexperienced players suffer from that? Unironically, I think the majority of what people call cheating is accidental, at least from my experience. But I've always said this in the past, that there's a chance that my experience when I go to a tournament is different to the experience from, let's call it, an average player, simply because I do think there's a possibility that people that would normally maybe be unfriendly or rule sharking or maybe even cheating would not do that against a well-known player like myself. I experience this very, very rarely when I go to tournaments. I have a lot of very nice games, very nice opponents. I don't know though if that experience translates to every single one. That's just my side, and I'm very aware that there might be people that experience that differently, but for me personally, this is not that big of an issue. Mohammed asks, do you think blind second can teach a player more than going first, since going first is all about how good is your knowledge of a deck and how do you play around some cards, comes from that knowledge, while breaking boards is providing a lot of things to learn, baiting, mind games, etc. I do think different formats and different styles of play always teach you different things. And that's why I think you should in general be open to doing that. But also the other stuff that you talked about, like the going first and how to use hand traps and how to play around hand traps, is also a very important skill set. So in reality, you should probably do a little bit of both. Sometimes people complain about formats where every deck looks the same. And while I understand the criticism of that, I also want to point out that very often in formats where every deck looks the same, ignore the fact that I own a Fluon rescore, please. For example, Tearlament's format. In Tearlament's format, deck building was not that important, because the deck was so powerful and hyper consistent that it didn't really matter how you built it. But it was a format where you could learn how to play very well and play super interactive games, as opposed to, I think right now is a format where deck building is a little bit more important than the actual playing portion, because the actual playing portion at the moment, let's be real, Snake Eye Mirrors come down to how many starters / extenders versus how many hand traps, right? It's not the most enticing gameplay, even though there's still skill beyond that. The deck building is more important in those kind of formats, right? Like picking the right hand traps for the situation, deciding to play the right cards for the right times and all that kind of stuff. Setanta God asks, when videos with Charlie? You know, when I got a cat, it was not for content. So I don't know, maybe never. Maybe whenever he feels like showing up in my room. In general, with Charlie, it's going really well. He's getting very comfortable at home, doing great, but he is not here to create content with, you know? Demi-Duelist asks, do you believe there are currently decks that are undiscovered but could be meta contenders? Usually looking back at retro formats like Edison, the meta is way different if the format has time to age. The short answer is yes, I do believe that there is almost always stuff that is undiscovered / stuff that is underexplored in Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because there's so many different decks. And even I experience this like constantly, that I think stuff has potential, but I simply don't have enough time to try everything. Maybe not so much stuff that is then the best deck of the format. I don't know how often that really happens, but like decks that could top or maybe even win a YCS if piloted well and have a good day. I think there are plenty of those that people simply don't really care about. I think that happens very frequently. Almageddon asks, why do you insist that Hugin is not a bird when in Nordish mythology Hugin is one of Odin's ravens? Simple answer, birds are always bad for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Hugin is great, so it's not a bird. Outplayed. Jesse Cotton has said before that his Skystriker deck was his magnum opus in terms of deck building. Are there any decks you've built that you would consider the same way? I don't know if Jesse does this all the time, but I think for that tournament he prepared completely on his own. This is something I don't usually do. Like a lot of the decks that I've played that I'm very proud of were decks that I did not create myself or on my own. There's always input from other people, so I don't remember if there is a deck that I can take like all the credit for. Decks that come to mind basically are like my Paleo deck from 2017, but that is not a deck that I built on my own, right? There were people that helped, like my team at the time, Complexity Card Gaming and all that. There's a lot of people that had a lot of input on that deck, and like that deck is something that multiple people played at that tournament, right? And so it's not something that I take full credit for, even though I did build with them, right? Like I was part of that. The same is true for the Runic Sprite deck that I won Utrecht with. Back in the day, we did a lot of really good Dragon Ruler decks, but I don't think there's a deck that only I've built. Danish asks, has streaming content creation taken a toll or improved your mental health, and how so? Okay, that's a deep question. I think it's got pros and cons. I do think it's overall a positive. I'm doing well at the moment. There are certainly things about self-employment, mainly has something to do with like uncertainty and all that kind of stuff, like having to manage a lot of stuff yourself. That is very taxing. You don't have a stable income. It's like a lot about having to perform over and over and over, and relying on people watching and liking what you do is somewhat mentally taxing, but obviously since it's working out, I'm not too worried about that anymore. So at the moment, I'm just like enjoying the ride, so to say. It has a lot to do with the fact that I don't feel like I have to do this, right? I'm doing this because I like it. I have other options because I finished university for software engineering and I really like that too. So I could see myself doing that if it like doesn't work out anymore. So I don't feel like it's my only option, or I'm forced to do this, or I rely on this to get through life or whatever, right? I'm just doing it because I like it and it works. And if it doesn't work, I'll do software engineering and I'll probably also be happy with that. So kind of like the existence of a plan B makes the whole self-employment thingy a lot less scary for me. L Blitzcrank asks, how did you and your fiance meet? How many years has your relationship been? Love your work and thank you for all, world champion. I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. We met after I won YCS Prague. My fiance has played Yu-Gi-Oh in the past, not as actively, but she's played. So she's been following it sometimes, and she messaged me to say congratulations after I won YCS Prague, even though she didn't play that much anymore. I didn't even notice that it was meant to be more than a congratulations, you won YCS Prague. I just said thanks and moved on with my day. I'm not an expert at talking to women, by the way. I didn't notice, so she had to like keep pushing, and eventually I got the memo, and so that worked out. And they say prize support is not great at Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments when you can win a fiancé at it. That's been 7 years ago, more than 7 years ago. Do you have any advice for young players regarding not joking in the important moments? You said joking. Do you mean choking in important moments? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, if you have the ability to stay calm and joke during important moments, that's probably a good thing, because that usually means you're, I guess either you're too nervous or you're not nervous. It's a very broad question of like how to not choke. The most important thing to know is that being nervous is not gonna go away. The unfortunate news, I suppose. I still am hella nervous when I play important matches or important games. I guess it's just more like you learn how to deal with it and how to play under pressure better over time. But it's not something that's gonna go away. How do you deal with the mental after 5 or 6 matches? I think the answer is the same. I think you get used to it because you just do it over and over and over and over and over again. Like at this point, like I always know there's more to come after. I see this very often that people get really, really excited when they start 3-0 or something at a tournament, or 5-0 or 6-0 or 7-0 or 8-0. This is the sort of thing I don't get excited about that anymore, because no matter what score you have, basically it's the job's not done mentality. I guess currently the one moment for me that is still very hype is whenever I win the match that gets you into top cut guaranteed. It's a cool moment. I cherish that moment, but even that only lasts for like a couple minutes, and then I'm like, okay, job's not done, you know? And I guess that depends on your goals when you enter a tournament. If your goal is to like get your regional invite, I think it's completely fine to get super hyped after you win like round number 5 and you're guaranteed to go at least 5-2, which probably guarantees your invite. Completely okay. When your goal becomes to like win the tournament or something, then the moment to get excited is after you've done it, you know? Everything before that is just like part of the process. Next question: how much does being good at a deck correspond to being able to play well against the deck? Does knowing a deck well make you better at beating it and vice versa? If you're struggling at beating a certain deck, I do think it helps to take the time to play the deck yourself a little bit. I do think at the same time though, at the moment and in recent years, it is a very big task to play and learn how to play every deck in the format is something that most people don't have the time for, because there's just so many different decks that are viable. Realistically, if you want to prepare as best as you can for a big tournament, yes, you want to play or be able to play with most of the decks in the format, at least like top 5 maybe, that are really realistic for you to play against. I think it's also okay to just practice against a deck. If you know you're not going to play that deck, I think you can also learn how to beat a deck by just playing against it. The Atelier asks, how do you sort your time between Yu-Gi-Oh and other passions you might have? Not very well is the answer. I'm not very good at managing my time. The easiest answer is I procrastinate a lot and I put in a lot less organizational work than I should. Wi-Fi asks, what's the most important skill to improve in Yu-Gi-Oh? If I had to narrow it down to one skill, it would probably be being able to apply logic. You would think that's a given, but in so many different aspects, it's like the most important thing, I feel like. I think being able to apply solid logic to deck building and situations and finding the best play is like super important and undervalued. Emre asks, if you had to be one flu monster, which one would you like to be? I would like to be Snowl, because then I wouldn't be played and I would have nothing to do with that shit. What was one of your favorite moments in your TCG history, Yu-Gi-Oh or other games? I do think my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh memory is the Billy Break back-to-back YCS finals one. Obviously winning worlds with Emre and Quantal. I mean, there's a lot of good memories in 20 years. I think honorable mentions are also winning YCS Utrecht, because it was the first YCS I won while being a streamer, which was really cool. And then the other one was winning YCS Bologna with just a deck that I played because I liked it. Kageru asks, in non-linear combo decks, for example runic or synergistic engine piles, do you lab out and mesmerize combo combinations of starters and how to play them optimally, or do you just freestyle it? I start learning by freestyling, if that's possible. For certain decks, you can do that. For some decks, you can't. You'll notice that relatively quickly when you start by doing that. Basically, if I want to look at a runic combo deck, right, I will look at like the basic idea of the combo, right? The basic goal of like, okay, well, I have level 4 tuners here, and I'm going to summon a Hugin first, and then I want to make which level 6 synchro into how do I extend, you know? I'll try to understand the deck before I play it, and then I'll just run it. Freestyling feels so good until you misplay a step and screw everything up. See, the thing is though, this is part of learning, right? I know this feels bad. The best example is my locals experience with Melodious a couple days ago. I messed up a lot of stuff. In the moment, yes, that felt bad, but overall, I have a much better understanding for Melodious now than I had before, so it was still absolutely worth it. And I think being afraid of making mistakes in a card game usually just holds you back from making a lot of progress. I think it's faster even sometimes to just learn by playing. I don't know. Maybe it's just that I don't enjoy that form of learning that much. This literally carries over to like a lot of other aspects in my life. But the way I learn is not by sitting down and mesmerizing just words. You know, like I hated the stuff in school and in university where you just had to learn stuff by heart. Read something and repeat. Right? That was not something I enjoyed. And this is also why before I studied software engineering, I actually studied, what's it called? Economics? Because I came out of school, I didn't know what to do. It was like, oh, well, you're good with math, you're good with numbers, go do that. Right, is what they said, or what I thought. I started doing that, and it turns out it was super dry and super like you just have to learn a lot of stuff by heart and then repeat. And that is just really not my thing. And that was also really different with software engineering, right? Software engineering, when you're programming, obviously you have to understand how to do it, and there's rules for that. But at the same time, it's relatively free and creative. And that's what I enjoyed. It's kind of like freestyling a combo deck. Basically, you need to understand what you're doing first, and then you can apply it in whichever way you like. I guess you just have to know yourself, because I know some people that really appreciate that, you know, just learn something and then repeat and be good at that. Some people are good at that. I'm not. And that's why I find non-linear combo decks very fun as well. It's funny how these learnings from life can translate into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or vice versa. You sure own a lot of sus cardboard. I am the kind of person, I spend too much money on cards, let's be real. I tend to own a lot of stuff just because I might eventually want to play it. And instead of just buying it when I want to play it, I buy it beforehand just in case I want to play it at some point, which I don't know how much sense that makes, but yeah. Eric asks, where do you think the game is heading in 2 years? If you had asked me this question 2 years ago, I probably would have said the exact same thing. I think it's just going to keep doing what it does. I don't feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! As a game or as a community, since I started streaming, I don't think it's changed that much. We get new cards, we talk about how we play with those new cards, we play those new cards, and rinse and repeat. From a game perspective, I'm hoping that the trend of banning some floodgates and some ubiquitous extra deck monsters continues. Appaloosa is the next big one that I'm hoping. A new master rule eventually. There's always suggestions of quote-unquote fixing Yu-Gi-Oh! With a new rule. I personally don't know if it's the right approach, because last time they did that, it kind of backfired, right? Everyone is always suggesting new rule changes, but then when they did Master Rule, what was it, 4? A lot of people hated that, and they reverted that, basically. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs a rule change. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs just better ban lists and sometimes more careful card design, and I think we'd be in a good spot. How do you test decks? I look at a lot of decks in theory, mainly on stream, right? This is usually how I start learning about new decks, is we look at like certain combos or certain deck lists on stream together. And this really helps me stay in touch with the game. This is like the biggest benefit of being able to do this as my day job. And then whenever I want to take a deck more seriously, I just like play it myself. Maybe I look at some combos beforehand, but usually I just try to freestyle it and see if I like it, see if it feels good. And then if it does, I'll look at it in more detail, maybe see how I can optimize the lines. Kind of how I played Melodious at locals a couple days ago. I thought the deck felt strong, and so yesterday we looked at some lines on stream. Herman was in the chat and told me about some of the better ways to play the combo, because I haven't been doing the optimal combos, because I don't think that's necessary for learning how a deck works in the beginning, right? Like, I don't think you need to be focusing too much on playing it perfectly. I didn't care about winning the locals I went to or playing perfectly in every single game. That was not my goal. My goal was to see what the Melodious deck does, right? And I did do that. And that's usually how I approach new decks. Sandu GG asks, what goes into prepping for a tournament, and do you have any advice for somebody that's only ever gone to small locals who wants to try competing at larger tournaments? In reality, I think the only thing you should be changing is your mindset. When I go to locals, for example, I tend to play more experimental stuff because I want to try it. The bigger it gets, usually the more seriously I take it. And what I also really like to do is I like to use the next smaller version of a tournament as like a testing ground. For example, I really like to go to regionals in the times before there's a YCS. So in your case, if you're like going to a regional next or whatever, I think it's really good to just go to locals and test your deck at locals for the regional without putting too much emphasis on performing at that one locals. Just like use it as a testing ground for the bigger tournament. Mike Dorf, if you could change only one thing about the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game, gameplay, card rarity, events, what would it be? I would probably change the rarity distribution in main sets. Cards be available in multiple rarities to make it A, more affordable, and B, just have cards available in different rarities so you can pick the one you like. Itzia Roy asks, when you decided to aim to become a professional player, how did you get past the plateau in improvement and stay motivated to improve more? I think the biggest thing about this entire thing is that I never decided to become a professional Yu-Gi-Oh player. That is not something I ever said to myself, yes, I'm gonna be that now. It is something I became through just a whole lot of passion and enjoyment. And I think that's what makes it possible if you have that passion over a long time. I didn't get tired because I like it. I like this game so much. I didn't care about the prizes because I didn't play for the prizes, and I didn't care about losing because I wanted to improve, to like get better anyways and all that. It's something I don't think you can force. If you enjoy something, that's gonna happen. And if you don't enjoy something, it's not gonna happen. The new Face of Creation asks, what was the first video game console you owned? Not I, but we had a Game Boy Color. My dad technically owned it, and then like my sister and I sometimes played with it. The first one I owned myself, well, very technically, the first video game console I owned was a PlayStation 1. It was either my birthday or Christmas, I don't remember. And then I forced my dad to go to the store with me on the next day and change it for a Nintendo 64 because I ain't going to be a PlayStation kid, you know, like that shit not gonna happen. I cried and we got a Nintendo 64 the next day. Easy clap. PlayStation 1 was cool though. I mean, I'm sure it was. I think it was because I wanted a Nintendo 64 and I think my parents didn't know what that was, so they accidentally bought the wrong one. And so I was expecting something else. I really wanted to play, I think it was like Mario 64 and Pokemon Stadium and that kind of stuff, and I couldn't on the PlayStation, and that's why I was mad. And they didn't know that there was a difference probably, right? I'm sure all the kids that had a PlayStation 1 also had a great childhood. My dad is complaining that I used the word I forced my dad to buy a Nintendo 64. I guess we know who's watching. That's how it was though. At least that's how I remember it. Taj Alam asks, have you had any significant learning moments during your time as a duelist that changed how you play or think about the game? I think YCS Bologna was an important learning for me. It basically encouraged me to more often just play what I like. Not always, but like I don't want to like pressure myself too much in formats where I don't enjoy maybe the top decks. If that happens again in the near future, I'm probably just going to play something that I like. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, it also is fine. For YCS Dortmund, I learned that with modern time rules, playing a deck like Pearly that is relatively slow and pays life points is not a great idea if you don't have a solution for timeout, which should be trivial, but there I was somehow not paying attention to that. So yeah, stuff like that. Alex asks, hey Josh, I tend to tilt pretty easily when playing Master Duel. I'm sure you faced frustrating circumstances in TCG tournaments. What tips do you have on keeping your cool when things aren't going your way so it doesn't affect your play? This is one of the things that's probably easier said than done, because there's definitely moments like this for me as well, and I don't always handle it well. I guess it also depends on your day-to-day, like how are you feeling on that day. Sometimes it affects you more, sometimes it affects you less. I think what I've learned over the long term, it's a very rational take, and I know in those situations it's probably hard to think that way, but tilting really hurts your chances of doing well in a tournament, right? Like if you lose round 5 or something in a really frustrating way, tilting at that point is just really bad for you in the long run, right? And that is something I just don't want, a situation like that to negatively impact my entire tournament run, right? And so I try to avoid it. For the sake of doing well in the tournament, you have to like try to handle it better, I guess. Just don't. Yeah, just don't tilt. Long story short. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the stream. It was definitely necessary. I had a good time. It was a chill stream. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support.